My name is Robert Hursey. I'm 35 years old, and I currently live in Portland, Oregon. I moved to this city in 2024, but I want to take you back to what happened in 2023, back to my life in Seattle, Washington, where I was born and raised as a devoted Jehovah's Witness, a life I thought was the only way to please God until everything changed. Seattle was a busy city with its tall buildings, the Space Needle standing proud against the gray sky, and the smell of rain and salt water from Puget Sound always in the air. I lived in a small house in a working-class neighborhood, the kind where you could hear seagulls in the morning and the hum of traffic at night. Our home was simple, with a tiny living room where we kept our Watchtower magazines neatly stacked on a shelf, and a kitchen that always smelled like Linda's cooking, usually her vegetable soup, a recipe she learned from her mother. I was a husband to Linda, who was 32 at the time, and a father to our two children, Sarah, who was 7, and Jacob, who was 4. We were a close family, tied together by our faith as Jehovah's Witnesses. I was raised in the faith, taught from a young age that Jehovah's Witnesses were the only true religion. My parents were strict, making sure I went to every meeting at the Kingdom Hall, studied the Watchtower magazines, and went door to door to preach about Jehovah's kingdom. We didn't celebrate holidays like Christmas or birthdays. They were seen as pagan, and I never questioned it. Growing up, I was taught that Jesus was not God, but Michael the Archangel, that the Trinity was a false teaching, and that only 104,000 special people, the anointed ones, would go to heaven to rule with Jesus. The rest of us, if we were faithful, would live forever on a paradise earth after Armageddon. I believe salvation came through faith in Jehovah, strict obedience to the organization's rules, and good works like preaching and living a clean life. By 2023, I was 35 and a ministerial servant in our congregation, a role that made me feel both proud and pressured. I worked as a janitor at a local school, cleaning classrooms and hallways to support my family, but my real focus was on my faith. I spent my evenings and weekends at the Kingdom Hall or out preaching. I'd go door to door with Linda, our kids walking beside us, carrying little bags with tracts to hand out. Most people were polite but not interested. Some slammed the door in our faces, calling us names like cult members. I'd smile and say, Jehovah will open their hearts one day. But deep down, those moments hurt. I'd look at Sarah and Jacob, their small hands holding the tracts, and wonder if I was doing enough to make sure they'd survive Armageddon. Despite all my efforts, I had doubts I was too scared to share with anyone. I'd lie awake at night, the house quiet except for the sound of Linda's soft breathing beside me, and my mind would race with questions. What if I wasn't good enough for the paradise earth? What if I didn't survive Armageddon? Why did I feel so empty even though I was doing everything the organization told me to do? I'd pray to Jehovah, asking for a sign, for some kind of peace, but I never felt anything. Just a heavy silence that made me feel even more alone. I'd hear Sarah and Jacob sleeping in the next room, their little snores so innocent, and I'd worry about their future. Were we really on the right path? At the Kingdom Hall, I felt like I had to be perfect. The elders watched me closely, and I knew any sign of doubt could get me in trouble, or worse, get me disfellowshipped, which meant losing my family and friends. One time during a meeting, I didn't answer a question about the 144,000 fast enough. An elder named Brother Thomas, a tall man with a stern face, pulled me aside after the meeting and said, Robert, you need to be stronger in your faith. Doubts come from Satan. You're a ministerial servant. People look to you for answers. His words made me feel so ashamed, and I tried harder, preaching more hours, studying more, hoping to push the doubts away. But the doubts only grew stronger. I started hearing about people who had left the faith. Apostates, that's what we called them. I was warned to stay away from them, told they were deceived by Satan and wanted to pull us away from Jehovah. But some of them told a different story that I couldn't ignore. I'd hear whispers at the grocery store or from a neighbor who knew someone who left. They said that after leaving the witnesses, they found Jesus. That didn't make sense to me. I had spent my whole life learning about Jesus. I taught others about him in my ministry, telling them he was Michael the Archangel, Jehovah's first creation, who died to give us a chance at paradise. How could people find Jesus after leaving Jehovah's organization. That would mean they never really knew him, which made me wonder if I really knew him either. I pushed those thoughts down, telling myself they were wrong, but they kept coming back like a quiet voice I couldn't silence. My best friend Mark was 36 at the time and a fellow witness, but he was more relaxed about the faith than I was. We'd known each other since we were kids, and he'd sometimes join me for coffee after a long day of preaching. We'd sit at a small cafe near the Kingdom Hall, the smell of coffee beans in the air, and he'd try to make me laugh. "Robert, you worry too much," he'd say, stirring sugar into his cup. "Jehovah sees your hard work. You're doing more than enough." But his words didn't help. I wanted to feel Jehovah's love, to know I was saved, but all I felt was fear of failing, of Armageddon, of not being good enough. One day I was at the Kingdom Hall helping set up chairs for a meeting. I was feeling more tired than usual, my head heavy with worry. A sister named Ruth, an older woman with kind eyes who'd been a witness for years, noticed. She came up to me, her hands holding a stack of songbooks, and said, "Robert, you look troubled. Remember what Jesus said in Matthew 11:28, 'Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest.' Jehovah doesn't want you to carry this alone." Her words hit me hard. I'd read that verse before, but we were taught it meant following Jehovah's organization, not going to Jesus directly. I mumbled, "Thank you, Sister Ruth," and went back to setting up the chairs. But her words stayed with me, stirring up more questions I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know it then, but something was about to happen that would turn my whole world upside down. It was a hot summer day in Seattle in 2023, a few weeks after Ruth spoke to me. I was out preaching door to door with Sarah, a sister from our congregation who often joined me for ministry. The sun was high in the sky, the air sticky with heat, and I could feel sweat dripping down my back. We were in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with small houses and kids playing in the yards, their laughter echoing down the street. I carried a bag with Watchtower magazines and tracts, my tie feeling tight around my neck, and Sarah walked beside me, her face red from the heat, but her smile bright as always. We'd been knocking on doors for hours, and I was feeling more tired than usual. My head was pounding and my mouth was dry, but I didn't want to stop. I had a quota to meet, hours I needed to report to the elders, and I was already behind for the month. I kept thinking about Armageddon, about how I needed to do more to make sure my family would survive. Sarah noticed I was struggling and said, "Robert, maybe we should take a break. You don't look so good." I shook my head, forcing a smile, and said, "I'm fine, Sarah. We need to keep going. Jehovah is counting on us." She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. We walked up to another house, a small one with a faded blue door, and I knocked. No one answered, so I turned to leave. But as I stepped off the porch, my vision started to blur. My legs felt weak, like they couldn't hold me up, and I stumbled, trying to grab onto the railing. I missed, and before I knew it, I was falling. I hit the sidewalk hard, my head slamming against the concrete with a loud crack. Pain shot through my skull, and I heard Sarah scream, "Robert! Oh no, Robert!" She dropped to her knees beside me, her hands shaking as she touched my face. "Someone help!" she shouted, her voice full of panic. A neighbor ran out of his house, a man in a red shirt yelling, "Call 911, he's not moving." I could hear their voices, but they sounded far away like I was underwater. My eyes closed and everything went black. I thought, this is it. I'm dying. Jehovah, please, have I done enough? When I opened my eyes, I wasn't on the sidewalk anymore. I was in a dark, horrible place, a place I'd never believed in, but knew right away. It was hell. The air was thick with heat, so heavy I could barely breathe, and it smelled like burning sulfur, making my stomach turn. The ground under my feet was rough, like broken rocks, and it cut into my shoes, sending sharp pain up my legs. All around me, I heard screams. Terrible, desperate screams of pain that made my heart race with fear. I saw flames in the distance, red and black, swirling like a storm, and shadowy figures moving in the fire, their bodies twisting in agony. I looked around, my hands shaking, and I saw people I knew, people from my life, burning in the flames. One of them was a man named Brother David, a witness who had been disfellowshipped a few years ago for questioning the organization. He tried to talk to me before he left, warning me that the teachings were wrong, but I'd turned away, thinking he was lost to Satan. Now he was here screaming, his face full of pain, his clothes on fire. He saw me and shouted, "I tried to tell you, Robert, the organization was wrong. I thought I was faithful, but I didn't know the truth. You'll end up here too if you don't find the real way." His voice was full of terror, and he reached out to me, his hands black with burns. I stepped back, my heart pounding, not wanting to believe it. Brother David had been so sure of his warnings. How could he be here? Then I saw something that broke my heart even more. I saw myself in the flames burning, my body shaking with pain. I was screaming, "I never knew you, I never knew you." My doubts, my fears, my emptiness, they were eating me alive. Even in this place, I saw a future where I kept following the Jehovah's Witness teachings, kept preaching, kept trying to earn my way to the paradise earth. But it wasn't enough. I ended up here in hell with no peace, no hope, just torment forever. I saw Linda at my funeral, her face pale, holding Sarah and Jacob as they cried. She whispered, "He didn't do enough. We'll never see him in paradise." My parents were there too, their heads down, saying, "We thought he was faithful. We thought he'd make it." I felt so alone, so lost, watching them grieve, knowing I'd let them down, knowing I'd failed. Jehovah, I fell to my knees, the rough ground cutting into me, tears streaming down my face. I cried out, "Jehovah, please. I did everything you asked. I preached, I studied, I followed the rules. Why am I here?" But the darkness just got heavier, the screams louder, and I felt like I was drowning in fear. I thought about all the hours I'd spent knocking on doors, all the meetings I'd gone to, all the rules I'd followed. No holidays, no blood transfusions, no voting. Why wasn't it enough? I saw my life flash before me. Every tract I handed out, every prayer I said to Jehovah, every moment I felt empty. I saw myself lying awake at night, my heart racing with fear, never finding the peace I wanted so badly. I thought, this is my punishment. I'll be here forever. But then something happened. A light appeared in the distance, small at first, like a star in the black sky. It grew brighter, pushing the darkness away, and the flames around me started to fade. The screams got quieter, and I felt a warmth that wasn't burning. It was gentle, like a soft hug. I looked up, my eyes wide, and I felt a tiny spark of hope in my chest. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew it was something different, something that might save me from this nightmare. I was still in that dark, fiery place, my heart pounding with fear. The screams of the people around me, the sight of myself burning in the flames, it was all too much. I thought I was lost forever, that I'd never find peace. But then that light in the distance grew brighter, pushing the darkness away like a wave. The flames around me started to fade, and the screams got quieter until they were just a faint echo. The air cleared, and I could breathe again. The light was warm, not burning, and it felt like a loving embrace wrapping around me, making me feel safe for the first time in that terrible place. The light came closer, and I saw a man standing in it. He was glowing, his clothes white like the purest snow, and his face was full of love and power. I knew right away who he was, even though I'd been taught he was just an archangel. It was Jesus. I felt so small, so unworthy, trembling as I looked at him. I thought, this can't be right. Jesus is Michael the archangel, not God. I'm supposed to see Jehovah. But Jesus spoke, his voice gentle but strong, like it could calm a storm. He said, "Robert, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." His words hit me like a thunderbolt, echoing in my heart, and I couldn't look away from him. I felt like he saw everything about me, my fears, my doubts, my pain, and he still loved me. Jesus stepped closer, and I saw his hands. There were marks where nails had been, deep scars that made my chest ache. He showed me his side, where a spear had pierced him, and said, "I died for you, Robert, to give you eternal life. I am not just an angel. I am God the Son, one with the Father and the Holy Spirit." I started to cry, tears streaming down my face, feeling a love I'd never known. It was different from anything I'd felt in my prayers to Jehovah. This love was real, alive, like it was holding me up. Jesus took my hand, and the dark place disappeared completely. We were in a beautiful place now, a heavenly realm with golden light everywhere, streets that shimmered like glass, and a throne radiating glory. I heard voices singing, "Holy, holy, holy," and I saw countless people, their faces glowing with joy, worshiping before the throne. Jesus walked with me, and I saw a river clear as crystal flowing from the throne, and trees on either side with leaves that sparkled like emeralds. He said, "This is heaven, Robert, where I reign with the Father. It's not just for 144,000. It's for all who believe in me." I saw people there smiling, their faces full of peace. One of them was my uncle, a man who had been disfellowshipped when I was a teenager for refusing a blood transfusion for his daughter, who later died. I'd been taught he was lost, but Jesus said, "He found me before he died, Robert. He believed in me in secret, and now he's with me forever." My uncle looked at me, his eyes bright, and smiled. He waved, and I felt so happy for him, but also so confused. How could this be true? Heaven for everyone who believed Jesus as God. Then Jesus showed me something else, something that made my heart ache. He said, "Look at your life, Robert." I saw myself all the times I preached, studied, and followed the organization's rules. I saw myself knocking on doors in the Seattle rain, my hands cold, handing out tracts with a forced smile. I saw myself at the Kingdom Hall leading a Watchtower study, my voice steady but my heart empty. I saw myself praying to Jehovah, asking for approval, but feeling nothing in return. Jesus said, "Look closer." I saw that even when I did all those things, I was empty inside. My preaching, my meetings, my rules, they were like a heavy chain around my heart, keeping me trapped in fear. I never felt peace, never felt close to God, only judged. Jesus said, "Your works cannot save you, Robert. The organization you followed taught you lies. I am God, not an angel. The Trinity is true, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God in three persons. Salvation is by grace through faith in me, not by your efforts." I saw how he died on the cross, his blood paying for my sins, how his resurrection made a way for me to be with God. I felt so ashamed, but also so loved knowing he did that for me. Then Jesus spoke about things I'd been taught to avoid. He said, "Robert, some of my followers actively participate in political processes, voting, running for office, believing it's their duty to influence society for good. I call my people to be salt and light in the world." As I said in Matthew 5:13-16, engaging in society to promote justice and love is not against my will. I thought about how we were taught to stay out of politics, to not vote or get involved. I felt a weight lift off me, knowing I could be part of the world in a good way. Jesus also addressed something that had always scared me, the rule about blood transfusions. We were taught the Bible said we couldn't take blood even to save a life because of Acts 15, verse 29, which says, "You are to abstain from food sacrificed to idols, from blood, from the meat of strangled animals, and from sexual immorality. You will do well to avoid these things. Farewell." I had seen people die because of this, like my uncle's daughter. Jesus said, "Robert, the command in Acts was about abstaining from blood in a specific way, eating it as part of pagan rituals. My law is about love and life. In Matthew 12:11, I taught that it's lawful to do good on the Sabbath, even to save a life. If you can save a sheep, how much more a human life? Blood transfusions to save a life honor the sanctity of life I created." His words made so much sense, and I felt a deep sadness for all the lives lost, but also a new understanding of God's love. Then Jesus showed me two futures, and they changed everything. In the first one, I kept following the Jehovah's Witness teachings, trying to earn my way to paradise. I saw myself getting older, my doubts growing worse, my family drifting apart. I saw myself die, and I ended up back in hell, burning my soul in torment. I saw Linda at my funeral, her face hard, saying, "He was so faithful, but he was so empty." Sarah and Jacob were there, their eyes dull, lost in a faith that gave them no hope. It broke my heart to see them like that, to know I'd led them astray. But then Jesus showed me a different future. I saw myself following him, my face full of peace, no more fear, no more emptiness. I saw myself smiling, my heart light, reading the Bible in a quiet room, not the New World Translation, but a Bible that showed the full truth of who Jesus is. I saw myself at a church worshiping with other believers, singing songs to Jesus as God. I saw myself with Linda, Sarah, and Jacob, all of us laughing, free from the rules that had held us back. I saw myself sharing my story with other Jehovah's Witnesses, their eyes lighting up as they found the same peace I had. Jesus said, "This is the life I want for you, Robert. I love your family. I love your city. I want you to go back and share my truth." I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. I said, "But how, Jesus? My family, my congregation, they'll shun me. I'll lose everything." Jesus put his hand on my shoulder, and I felt a strength I'd never felt before, like a fire in my chest. but a good fire, one that gave me courage. He said, "It won't be easy, Robert. They'll see you as an apostate and you'll face rejection, but I'll be with you. I am the true God, and I'll give you the peace you've been looking for." Then he said something I'll never forget. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." His words filled me with hope, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I felt free, like I could breathe for the first time in years. I looked at him, my heart full, and said, "I'll follow you, Jesus. I believe you're God. I want this peace. I want this life." He smiled, and the light around us grew even brighter, wrapping me in warmth. I saw the heavenly city one last time, the throne shining, the river sparkling, and I knew I'd never forget this place. Jesus said, "Go back, Robert. Be my light in the darkness." I nodded, ready to do whatever he asked, even if it meant losing everything I'd known. I had seen hell, I had seen heaven, and I had seen the truth. Jesus was God, and I was ready to follow him, no matter what it cost me. I woke up in a hospital room in Seattle, the sound of beeping machines filling the air. My head throbbed, and my body felt weak, like I'd been asleep for days. I opened my eyes, squinting at the bright lights, and saw Linda sitting by my bed. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying, and she was holding my hand so tight it hurt a little. She saw me wake up and gasped, "Robert, you're awake. Thank Jehovah." She started crying again, but this time they were happy tears. She leaned down and kissed my forehead, her hands trembling. I tried to sit up, but my head spun and I lay back down. "What happened, Linda?" I asked, my voice shaky. She wiped her eyes and said, "You collapsed while preaching, Robert. You hit your head so hard there was blood everywhere. Sarah called an ambulance and they brought you here. The doctor said your heart stopped for a few minutes. They thought you might not wake up. It's a miracle, Robert. A miracle." I looked at her, my heart racing, and said, "Jesus saved me, Linda. He's God." She froze, her eyes wide, her hand still on mine. "What do you mean, Robert?" she asked, her voice shaking. "You were calling for Jehovah when you fell. Sarah heard you." I took a deep breath, my throat dry, and started to tell her everything. I told her how I saw hell, how I saw myself burning there, my emptiness eating me alive. I told her about Brother David, the disfellowshipped witness, screaming that the organization was wrong. I told her how Jesus came to me, how he showed me his scars, how he took me to heaven and showed me he was God, not an archangel. I told her how he taught me the Trinity was true, that salvation was by grace through faith in him, not by works. I told her what he said about politics, that it was okay for Christians to vote and be involved to do good in the world. I told her about blood transfusions, how Jesus said they were okay to save a life, that the rule we followed was wrong. I said, "Jesus told me he's the only way, Linda. He told me to share his truth." Linda listened, her face a mix of fear and confusion. She kept looking at the door like she was afraid someone would hear us. When I finished, she whispered, "Robert, you can't say that. The elders will disfellowship you. You'll be an apostate. We'll lose everything. Sarah and Jacob, our friends, our family, they'll shun us." I nodded, my heart heavy, but I felt a peace in my chest, a peace I'd never felt before. I knew Jesus was with me, just like he promised. I said, "I know, Linda, but I can't keep this inside. It's the truth." Just then, my father, John, walked into the room. He'd been talking to the doctor in the hallway, and he heard the last part of what I said. His face turned red, his eyes narrowing with anger. "What is this nonsense, Robert?" he shouted, his voice so loud the nurse outside looked in. "Jesus is God? The Trinity? Blood transfusions? You're a ministerial servant. You know better than this. This is apostasy." I tried to explain, my voice shaking. "Dad, I saw hell. I saw myself there. Jesus came to me. He showed me the truth. He's God, not Michael the Archangel. He's the only way to salvation." My father slammed his hand on the wall, making me jump. "You're sick, that's all," he yelled. "You hit your head, and now you're talking crazy. You're a Jehovah's Witness, Robert. We raised you to follow the truth. Stop this talk, or you'll destroy your family." Linda started crying, her hands on her face, begging us to stop fighting. "Please, John, he's just woken up. Let him rest," she said. But my father pointed at me, his voice low and cold. "You better forget this nonsense, Robert. I won't let you ruin us." He stormed out, leaving me and Linda in silence. When I got out of the hospital a few days later, I went back to our small house in Seattle. Everything felt different now. The walls seemed closer. the air heavier. I started reading the Bible on my phone, not the New World Translation we used, but a real Bible I found online. I'd lock my bedroom door at night, sit on my bed, and read about Jesus, his divinity, his miracles, his love. I read John 1:1, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And I felt a thrill in my heart, knowing it was about Jesus. I'd whisper prayers to him, asking him to help me, to give me courage. I felt him with me, like a friend who never left my side. But I had to be careful. Linda was watching me, noticing every little change. I stopped going to the Kingdom Hall, saying I was too tired from the accident, but she didn't believe me. She'd say, "Robert, what's wrong with you? You're not the same. You used to lead our family's watchtower studies, go preaching with us. Now you're always in your room." I'd look down, my hands sweaty, and mumble, "I'm just resting, Linda." But she'd stare at me, her eyes full of worry, like she knew I was hiding something. The elders noticed too. Brother Thomas called me, his voice sharp, saying, "Robert, we've heard you're not coming to meetings. You're a ministerial servant. You need to set an example. What's going on?" I didn't know how to answer him without telling the truth. One day I decided to meet Ruth, the sister who'd quoted Jesus to me, to talk about everything. I texted her, asking if we could meet at a park near the water, a quiet place with benches and the sound of seagulls in the air. I got there early, sitting on a bench, watching the waves and Puget Sound sparkle under the sun. Ruth arrived, her gray hair tucked under a hat, and she smiled when she saw me. "Robert, you look different," she said, sitting next to me. I told her everything. My collapse, my NDE, the vision of hell, and how Jesus called me. I told her how I wanted to follow him, but I was scared of what my family and the congregation would do. Her eyes softened, and she said, "Robert, I've had doubts too. I've wondered about some of the teachings, but I was too afraid to speak up. What you saw, it sounds like the truth, but you're right to be scared. The organization doesn't take kindly to this." She reached into her bag and gave me a small booklet, a study guide on the Trinity. "Keep seeking, Robert," she said. "Jesus will show you the way." I thanked her, feeling like I had a friend who understood, someone I could trust. Things at home got harder. Linda started asking more questions, her voice tense. "Why aren't you studying with us anymore? Why do you look so different?" She'd watch me like I was a stranger, not her husband. One evening, I was in the bathroom washing my face, and I left my phone on the kitchen table. Linda picked it up, her hands shaking, and saw the Bible app I'd been using, not the New World Translation, but a standard one. She confronted me, her voice breaking. "Robert, what is this? Are you reading a false Bible? Are you turning away from Jehovah?" I froze, my heart pounding, my mouth dry. I tried to stay calm, but my voice was shaking. "Linda, I found the truth," I said. "Jesus is God. He showed me everything. The organization is wrong." She dropped the phone, tears streaming down her face, and shouted, "You're an apostate. You'll get us disfellowshipped. What about Sarah and Jacob? What about me?" I tried to reach for her, but she pulled away, sobbing, and ran to our bedroom, slamming the door. A few days later, the inevitable happened. Linda told the elders, and they called me to a judicial committee meeting at the Kingdom Hall. I sat in a small room facing 3 elders, Brother Thomas, Brother Paul, and Brother Stephen. Their faces were hard, their voices cold. Thomas said, "Robert, we've heard disturbing things. You're claiming Jesus is God, rejecting the organization's teachings. Is this true?" I took a deep breath, my hands trembling, and said, "Yes. I had a near-death experience. Jesus showed me he's God, not an archangel. The Trinity is true. Salvation is by faith in him, not by works. He even taught me it's okay to vote and that blood transfusions can save lives." The elders exchanged looks, their expressions darkening. Paul said, "You're an apostate, Robert. You're a danger to the congregation." I felt like I'd lost everything. Linda wouldn't speak to me, and I couldn't see Sarah or Jacob. My parents shunned me too, and my friends from the Kingdom Hall acted like I didn't exist. I was alone, living in that motel. The sound of cars outside my window keeping me awake at night. But I had Jesus, and for the first time, I felt a peace I'd never known. I'd pray to him every day, asking for guidance, for a way to rebuild my life. I started looking for a new job, something to get me out of Seattle, away from the pain of seeing my family shun me. I found a janitor position in Portland, Oregon, and moved there in early 2024. Portland was different, greener, with wide streets, the Willamette River running through it, and the smell of pine trees in the air. I rented a small apartment near my new job, a simple place with a bed, a table, and a window overlooking a park. I'd sit at that table every night, reading the Bible, learning more about Jesus as God, about the Trinity, about grace. I found Christian YouTube channels, sermons by pastors, testimonies from people like me, worship songs that made me cry. I'd watch them late at night, my headphones on, tears in my eyes, feeling so thankful for the peace Jesus gave me. I joined a small church in Portland, something I'd never imagined doing as a Jehovah's Witness. I found out about them from a flyer at a coffee shop, and I went to their service one Sunday, my heart pounding. They met in a cozy building with wooden pews and a big cross on the wall, something we never had at the Kingdom Hall. The pastor, a kind man named Peter, welcomed me with a warm smile. When I shared my story, my NDE, how Jesus revealed he was God, how I left the Jehovah's Witnesses, they listened with open hearts. A woman named Mary, who led the children's ministry, hugged me and said, "Robert, you're our brother now." They became my new family, people who loved me, prayed with me, helped me grow in my faith. We'd meet every Sunday singing songs like Amazing Grace, and I'd feel Jesus' presence so strongly, like he was right there with me. Jesus had told me to share his truth, and I knew I had to start here in Portland. I saw so many people who were lost just like I'd been, trapped in rules, searching for peace. I started talking to my coworkers, people I met at the park, even strangers at the grocery store. I'd say, "Can I tell you my story and share how I saw hell, how Jesus saved me, how he revealed he was God?" Some listened, their eyes wide, asking questions like, "But what about the Jehovah's Witnesses?" They seemed so sure. I'd tell them what Jesus showed me, how my works never brought me peace, how his grace did. I started a small Bible study group meeting in my apartment, just me and a few others. One of them, a man named Tom, who'd also left the Witnesses, gave his life to Jesus after we read John 10:30, "I and the Father are one." He cried, saying, "Robert, I feel free for the first time." I cried with him, so happy to see Jesus working through me. But it wasn't all easy. Some former Jehovah's Witnesses I knew in Portland found out about my new faith and got angry. One day, I was at the park near my apartment when a man named Andrew, who I'd known from my old congregation in Seattle, confronted me. He said, "Robert, I heard you're spreading lies saying Jesus is God. You're an apostate. You're leading people to destruction." I tried to explain, my voice shaking, "I'm not spreading lies. I'm sharing the truth. Jesus saved me. He's God, Andrew. He can save you too." But Andrew walked away, his face hard, muttering, "You're lost." I felt a pang of fear, but I remembered what Jesus said, "I'll be with you." I prayed that night asking for strength and decided to keep sharing my faith no matter the cost. Then one evening, I got a call from Mark, my best friend from Seattle. I was in my apartment eating a sandwich I'd made when my phone rang. I saw his name and answered, happy to hear from him, even though I knew he'd been shunning me. His voice was quiet, like he was scared. "Robert, I have news," he said. "Linda reached out to me. She's been struggling with her faith. She's been asking questions about the organization, reading the Bible in secret, not the New World Translation, but a real one. She's starting to wonder if you were right. She wants to talk to you, but she's scared. The elders are watching her closely, and they're spreading rumors about you, saying you've joined a false religion." I felt my heart leap with hope, my sandwich falling to the floor. I wanted to see Linda, to tell her I still loved her, to help her find Jesus. But I knew it wasn't safe yet, not with the elders watching. I felt torn between my new life in Portland, where I was free to follow Jesus, and my old life in Seattle, where my family was struggling because of me. I whispered a prayer, "Jesus, please help Linda, help her find you. Show me what to do." I knew I had to keep going, keep sharing Jesus' love, and trust him to work in my family's hearts. I'm here now in April 2025, sitting in my small apartment in Portland, Oregon, thinking about a moment that happened a few months ago, a moment that gave me so much hope. Some months ago, in January 2025 precisely, I sat in a small park near my church in Portland, Oregon, on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The air was cold, the ground covered with a thin layer of frost, and I could see my breath as I exhaled. I wore a thick jacket, my hands wrapped around a cup of hot coffee to keep warm, and I held a small notebook in my lap. letters I'd written to Linda, Sarah, and Jacob, letters I hoped to give them one day. I had invited a small group of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses to join me for a picnic. People I'd met through my Bible study group, people who were searching for the same peace I'd found. We sat on blankets, bundled up in coats and scarves, sharing hot drinks and food, a thermos of soup, bread, and some cookies I'd baked. The park was quiet, the trees bare, and I could hear the soft sound of a nearby stream. I felt a deep sense of joy as I looked at their faces, knowing I was doing what Jesus had asked me to do. I decided to share my story with them, to tell them everything that happened to me. I took a deep breath, my hands steady, and started talking. "My name is Robert Hursey," I said, my voice soft but clear. "I'm 35 years old, and I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, a ministerial servant in my congregation in Seattle. I was raised to believe Jesus was Michael the Archangel, that the Trinity was a lie, that salvation came through works and obedience to the organization. I tried so hard to be faithful, to please Jehovah, to make my family proud, but I was always empty inside, always scared I wasn't good enough. I'd lie in bed at night, my heart heavy, asking Jehovah if I was saved, but I never felt an answer, just fear." I paused, looking at their faces, and kept going. Then one day, I collapsed while preaching in Seattle. My heart stopped for a few minutes, and I had a near-death experience that changed everything. I saw hell. I saw myself burning there, my emptiness consuming me. I saw a disfellowshipped witness, Brother David, screaming that the organization was wrong. He told me I'd end up there too if I didn't find the truth. I was so scared, thinking I'd be there forever, that I'd failed my family, failed Jehovah, failed myself. I wiped a tear from my eye, my voice stronger now. But then Jesus came to me. He appeared in a light so bright it pushed the darkness away. He showed me his scars, the nails in his hands, the spear in his side, and said, "I died for you, Robert, to give you eternal life. I am God, not an angel." He took me to heaven, a glorious place with a throne, a river, and a city of light. I saw my uncle there, a man I thought was lost, but he had believed in Jesus in secret. Jesus showed me the truth, that he's God, that the Trinity is real, that salvation is by grace through faith in him, not by works or the organization. He taught me it's okay for Christians to vote and be involved in politics, to do good, and that blood transfusions to save a life are not against his will. He said, "Your works cannot save you, only my grace can. I am the only way to true peace." I leaned forward, my heart full. Jesus showed me two futures. In one, I kept following the Jehovah's Witness teachings, and I ended up back in hell, my soul in torment, my family grieving at my funeral, lost in a faith with no hope. In the other, I followed Jesus, and I found peace. I saw myself smiling, free from fear, worshiping with other believers, sharing Jesus' love with my family. I saw people listening, finding the same peace I did. Jesus told me I am the way, the truth, and the life. He called me to share his truth, to be his light in the darkness. I took a deep breath, my hands holding the notebook tightly. When I woke up in the hospital, I knew I had to follow Jesus, but it wasn't easy. My wife, Linda, didn't understand. The elders disfellowshipped me, and I was shunned by my family and friends. I lost everything, my marriage, my kids, my community. I moved here to Portland, started over, and found a new family in a church that loves me. I started reading the Bible, the real Bible, and felt so close to Jesus. I started a Bible study group, sharing my story with others, including people like you. I told them how Jesus saved me, how he's God, and some of them listened. I looked at their faces, seeing tears in their eyes, and I felt a deep joy. One of the group members, a young woman named Rachel, who had recently left the Witnesses, started crying. She said, "Robert, your story gives me hope. I've been so scared, but I want to know this Jesus." I smiled, my heart full, and said, "Let's pray together, Rachel." We held hands and I prayed, "Jesus, please touch Rachel's heart. Show her your love, your peace. Thank you for saving me, for giving me this new life. Please help Linda, Sarah, and Jacob find you too. Amen." Rachel accepted Christ, her face lighting up with peace, and I felt so happy knowing I was doing what Jesus had asked me to do. As the picnic ended, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I looked at the notebook in my hands, the letters I'd written to Linda, Sarah, and Jacob, and I whispered a prayer. "Jesus, please bring Linda and the kids back to me. Let them know you like I do." Just then, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. E answered, my heart racing, and I heard Linda's voice. trembling but soft. "Robert, I've been reading the Bible, the real one," she said. "I found a verse you mentioned, John 14, verse 6. Can we meet? I need to understand." I felt tears in my eyes, my heart leaping with joy as I realized Jesus was answering my prayers. I said, "Yes, Linda, let's meet. I'll tell you everything." I hung up, my hands shaking, and looked at the sky, whispering, "Thank you, Jesus." I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I trusted him to guide me, to bring my family back, and to use me to share his love with others. Now, in April 2025, I sit here in my apartment thinking about that day in January. Linda and I have been talking more since then, and she's starting to open her heart to Jesus. I feel so much hope knowing Jesus is working in her life, and I pray every day that Sarah and Jacob will come to know him too. I'm still sharing my story, still helping others find the peace I've found, and I know I'm exactly where Jesus wants me to be.